All right, let's get right into it. For a long, long time, we've been told one story about adoption, that it's all about rescue. But today, we're going to look at a powerful challenge to that story, looking at it through a civil rights lens based on the work of adoptee activists and researchers.
And this one question right here is really at the heart of everything we're talking about today. It's a question that goes way beyond asking for small fixes. It forces us to look at the very foundation of the entire modern adoption system. So, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with how the story of adoption is being completely re-examined. Then we'll break down this really key legal idea called genealogical nullification and explore how it's actually a feature, not a bug, of the system. From there, we'll ask if reform can ever really be enough, which leads us to the call for abolition and what that really means.
Okay, first up, the unseen rupture. That old familiar narrative, that adoption is just a simple act of kindness, is being taken apart piece by piece, mostly by the very people who have lived it, adoptees themselves.
And you've got to understand, this isn't just about asking for, nicer paperwork or more sensitive social workers. The whole conversation has shifted. We're now talking about a fundamental challenge to the institution itself, asking whether the system, just by the way it's built, actually causes harm.
And that kind of fundamental questioning leads us straight to the core idea of this whole analysis, genealogical nullification. This is the hidden legal engine that runs the entire modern adoption system.
So what is it exactly? Well, genealogical nullification is the legal process where a person's original identity, their birth certificate, their name, their entire family history, isn't just put in a locked file somewhere. It is legally overwritten and replaced with a brand new one. I mean, think about that for a second. It's an act of total replacement, not addition.
And this whole thing happens in 3 very specific steps. First, the state seals or completely changes the original birth certificate. Second, it legally cuts all ties to the biological family, just extinguishes them. And third, it actively rebuilds that person's identity under a new family tree. This is, from a legal standpoint, a complete rewrite of who a person is.
And that brings us to a really critical point in this analysis. This act of erasure isn't some accident. It's not an unfortunate side effect. The argument is that this is the system working perfectly, exactly as it was designed to.
From this point of view, the whole process is seen as this clean, bureaucratic move. They call it an administrative disappearance. And it is precise. A new certificate gets printed, a name gets changed, and an entire history gets put away in an archive. What happens is the individual ends up in a state that researchers call administrative dislocation.
You can really see the clash here between the popular story and the legal reality. The story we all know is that adoption is purely about addition. A child gains a family. But the civil rights critique says there's a hidden trade-off happening, especially in what's called plenary adoption. For that gain to be legally real, an original identity has to be erased first. It's not just that a life is improved, it's that an identity is legally rebuilt by the state.
And this reframes the whole idea of adoption. It's not rescue, it's redistribution. The argument here is that adoption isn't random. It follows very clear patterns in society. It very often moves children from families with fewer resources and less power to families with more. And when that happens, it stops being just a private family story and becomes a political act, with really big systemic implications.
Okay, so if the system is designed to work this way, then what about just fixing it, reforming it? Well, this next part argues that just tinkering around the edges might miss the entire point.
And here's the huge question that critics say reform often just doesn't touch. An infant obviously cannot consent to being adopted. So why is that decision, a decision made without their consent, legally permanent for their entire life? I mean, almost no other contract or legal status works that way. You can't get out of it. Now, the usual reform efforts, they focus on things that are important, right? More openness in adoption, better counseling for everyone involved, maybe allowing some partial access to the original records. And from one perspective, yeah, those are good steps.
But the abolitionist argument is that these reforms, no matter how good their intentions are, they just don't deal with the central civil rights question. Should the state even have the power to completely erase and then replace a person's legal identity in the first place? These reforms might change how the system looks on the outside, but they leave its core power, that power to rewrite a person, totally intact.
So this all leads us straight to the call for abolition. And it is so important to understand what this actually means. It's a call to end a specific legal fiction. It is not a call to stop caring for children.
To be super precise, adoption abolition is aimed at that specific legal model we talked about, plenary adoption.
That's the system we've been breaking down, the one that permanently wipes out an original identity. Again, the goal isn't to leave kids without families. It's to stop the state from having the power to legally rewrite who they are.
And this isn't just about critique. It comes with concrete alternatives that, by the way, already exist. Things like legal guardianship, which can give a child a permanent, loving home while still preserving their original identity and birth certificate. Or kinship-first systems. And maybe most important of all, supporting families with the economic help they need so they don't get separated in the first place. The idea is care without erasure. And all of that brings us here, to our conclusion, which frames this entire analysis as a fight for something we should all have, the right to your own story. When you strip away all the complex legal arguments and the history, it all boils down to this one powerful, incredibly clear demand: the right for every single person to exist, legally, as who they are, without having their identity wiped out and rewritten by the state.
And so, let's end with a question to leave you thinking. This whole analysis forces us to ask, for more than 100 years, why have we as a society allowed a system that is built on the legal erasure of a person to be the main way we define what caring for a child even looks like?